Yeah,
And
well,
I'd just like to put it to you as basically as possible. I mean, is the jig up for us? Is this how it ends?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that this transgressive behavior that you're describing is part of the all-out assault on Western categories of thought. And I think that that was started not even so much by the Marxists as by the French intellectuals of the late 1960s, especially Jacques Derrida, who maybe is the most dangerous person of the last 40 years. And he's, of course, the hero of the humanities and much of the social sciences. Right. And he believes that, and states this in his work, that the whole purpose of categorization is for exclusion. And so and categorization is the basis of cognition.
Yeah.
And so he basically has made the claim that thought itself is an agent of oppression. Right. And that's absurd, except that he's the dominant thinker.
Yeah.
And I don't think I know people don't understand how radical and transgressive the universities actually are and how deeply embedded this sort of thinking is in them. And this gender issue is a screen as far as I'm concerned, and it's a screen which is why it's got so much attention. It's a screen for an all-out assault, and that assault started back in the late 60s. It started when the Marxists transformed themselves into postmodernists, roughly speaking, when they realized that their working class utopia, when they finally realized after decades of denial that their working class utopias in the Soviet Union, for example, were absolutely murderous and reprehensible empires, they transferred their thinking to identity politics and carried on their merry way.
Right. Which is there's a useful American expression. I don't need this in my life right now, and that's how a lot of people feel about this.
Yeah, I can understand
they
that.
don't want to. They don't. Why should this or that person have to take on this battle?
Yeah.
And
My colleague said
that question applies to you too. I mean,
my colleagues told me, this is one of the reasons that I made the video to begin with. I had a colleague tell me that he's very worried about the encroachment of political correctness on the campuses, but he said he wasn't sure what to do about it because if he stood up against it, the personal cost would be overwhelming and the social effect would be negligible. Right. And I thought, God, that's such a horrible thing to think. But I took it seriously, right? I mean, it was a serious thing for him to say. Yeah. And there's more than a small part of me that wishes I'd never hit this particular hornet's nest with a bat. Yeah. But the reason I did it was because I believe it will be worse later. Yeah. That's why. And I do believe that. And I think we're in far worse shape than we think.
Because we've made so many incremental concessions already.
Yeah.
Because it's always easier to surrender an inch at a time.
Well, and the thing is too, is like what happened when I made my, let's call it, stance for free speech. I was immediately accused of being both a transphobe and a racist, because I had made some negative comments about this group called the Black Lives Collective. Yeah. I think that's the name of them, who are run by two reprehensible people in my estimation. And the university had been taking policy advice for them, even though they were perfectly willing to promote violence in the service of social change. I was objecting to that. And the thing is that as the politically correct movement inches forward, there's always a vulnerable group that they're using as a just like the terrorists do in the Middle East. They'll surround their hideout with women and children, so that if you bomb the hideout, you kill these innocent people. Well, the social justice warrior types do exactly the same thing. They find a hypothetically vulnerable group, it doesn't matter what it is, and then they use them as a protective shield while they move incrementally forward. And so if you object, then immediately you're targeted as someone who's picking on the poor, vulnerable people. And I've heard through the grapevine that I have support among the faculty, although you'd never know that by their actions. But basically, the faculty's net conclusion is that, well, what you're saying is right, but you could have been a lot nicer about it. And
pay no attention to that. I mean, I had all that, and my friend Ezra Levant had all that when he republished the Danish Mohammed cartoons. And the fact is that if you are nice and sensible and you play footsie with them, the whole racket stays in place. And it's only because Ezra Levant in particular just decided to go nuclear on these human rights commissions that we wound up getting that law repealed at the federal level.
Yeah, that was quite a fight.
But you need the guy. You need the guy who's going to go crazy and who's going to go nuclear. And so all the things that Conrad Black said about you are in fact the reason why you have become a lightning rod for this issue, and why you absolutely need to do that.
Yeah, well, I've tried to think through that, why this caused so much attention, because lots of people have made statements, decrying political correctness, but I believe the reason was because I actually said there was something I would not do.
Right.
And so I drew a line, so to speak, and it was that combination of generality, warning about political correctness, and specificity that made the issue real for people.
And just finally here, I mean, you don't like to see this in like crude left-right, politically partisan.
No, it's deeper than that.
But it is a general proposition, is it not, that if you meet someone who is opposed to gay marriage, say, there's someone who is opposed to gay marriage. He's not someone who's opposed to you arguing in favor of gay marriage. He just wants the right to argue his corner too. The left, on the other hand, isn't really interested in your argument against gay marriage. They're actually now saying you do not have the right to make an argument against gay marriage.
Absolutely, and many other arguments.
Yes, and that is...
Because it's discriminatory.
Yeah.
And the domain of what constitutes discriminatory is magnifying constantly.
And people at a certain point, the left still paid lip service to that apocryphal bit of Voltaire, I disagree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. Nobody even pretends to go.
No, and many of the kids on the left regard arguments, they equate arguments in favor of free speech with racism. They just assume they're the same thing.
Right. Which is again why destroying language has been in turn so destructive.
Yeah.
Well, it's support this man because he's engaged in an important battle. And as I said, it is the bedrock issue. Because unless we win on the free speech thing, unless we have a culture of genuine, vigorous debate on these issues, then none of the other issues matter, because there will only be an official state ideology. And free people should be opposed to official state ideology, regardless whether it's fascism, communism, or about climate change and transgendered bathroom. The minute it becomes the official position and the only one you're allowed to hold, you should be opposed to it and support Jordan Peterson. You've got to be tough to take what's coming your way, Jordan, and I salute you. It's not an easy battle, and you're doing a great thing. Thanks.